On September 29, 2025, at exactly 6:34 p.m., Ukrainian drones crossed into Russia's Belgorod region. The target was clear and deadly, the region's main power plant, a site that provided electricity not only to civilians, but also to army depots, radar stations, and supply hubs. That evening, Russian generals were said to be present at the plant, holding a meeting and celebration to show confidence that the facility was safe and protected. For weeks, Ukraine had studied the location carefully. Satellites tracked fuel convoys, power lines, and military trucks moving in and out. Signals intelligence confirmed the plant was central to supporting Russian military operations. This was not a random choice. It was deliberate. Russia believed the plant was secure, shielded by layered defenses. Multiple Pantsir short-range systems were placed around it, and Buk batteries were stationed nearby. Generals and officers in attendance were confident no drone could get close. But Ukraine had planned a strike designed not to test defenses, but to break them. The attack began with a wave of smaller drones flying in high and fast. Dozens appeared on Russian radars as operators scrambled to respond. Alarms sounded, and anti-air crews fired missiles into the sky. Pantsir systems lit up with tracers, and explosions filled the horizon as drones were shot down. To the defenders, it looked like another swarm attack aimed at testing their responses. Commanders ordered more interceptors fired, determined not to allow any target through. But this was exactly the trap Ukraine had set. While air defenses focused on the decoys, a much larger drone flew low, hugging terrain and staying nearly invisible to radar. It carried a 340-kilogram warhead, heavy enough to destroy transformers, fuel tanks, and entire switch yards in one blast. It was the real weapon, and it was closing in. Inside the plant, workers continued their routines, and generals on site moved confidently through control rooms and halls. They believed their anti-air umbrella was holding. They did not know that every second they stood there, the danger grew closer. Civilians nearby saw flashes of intercepts in the sky and thought the threat was over. Instead, it was just beginning. Ukrainian planners had coordinated the timing so that the real strike came when Russian defenses were distracted, stretched, and confused. The low-flying drone crossed into the plant's perimeter almost unnoticed, slipping under the chaos. Then came the moment of impact. At 6:39 p.m., the heavy drone released its warhead directly into the transformer yard. The explosion was massive. Fire ripped through high-voltage lines and switchgear. Buildings shook. Flames shot high into the evening sky, and a black mushroom of smoke rolled upward. The shockwave shattered windows in nearby towns. Inside the plant, ceilings collapsed, alarms failed, and operators were thrown to the ground. The celebration turned into panic. In less than 5 minutes, Belgorod's main power source was gone, and the entire city went dark. The blackout spread fast and wide. Within seconds of the strike, entire neighborhoods across Belgorod lost power. Lights in apartment blocks flickered once and then died, plunging families into sudden darkness. Streetlights went black, traffic lights froze, and cars piled up at intersections as horns echoed through the city. Hospitals rushed to switch on backup generators, but even those systems were strained. Some machines faltered, forcing doctors and nurses to work by flashlight. In grocery stores and cold storage warehouses, freezers began to warm, and food supplies were threatened. Water pumps in municipal plants slowed and some taps went dry. The hit was not just a military strike, it was an assault on civilian life, designed to paralyze the city and spread fear. But the real weight of the attack fell on the Russian military. This plant was no ordinary civilian facility. It powered supply hubs, fueling stations, and radar networks that supported ongoing operations in the region. Without it, depots went dark and electronic equipment shut down. Radars tracking drones and aircraft stopped transmitting. Supply trains froze on tracks, unable to move. Fuel pumps at depots stalled. Russian bases in the area scrambled to activate backup power, but those smaller systems could not handle the demand. Command posts operated by candlelight and battery, while officers struggled to coordinate. The blackout created a hole in Russia's war effort that Ukraine had long wanted. Air defenses reacted immediately after the explosion. Fighters were scrambled into the air, and surface-to-air missiles were launched in all directions. Russian radar operators tried to regain control, but they were working blind. Ukrainian electronic warfare pods jammed their signals, filling screens with static. For several long minutes, command centers could not tell if more drones were inbound. Confusion spread quickly. Generals shouted orders, but communications were patchy. Radio links cut in and out, and secure lines failed. The very systems meant to respond to an attack had been crippled by the strike. On the ground, Russian soldiers raced to secure the burning site. Fire brigades struggled to approach because explosions continued as transformers and tanks ignited one by one. The air filled with acrid smoke, and visibility dropped. Fireballs lit the night sky, sending plumes that could be seen for miles. Civilians living nearby fled their homes as embers rained down. Some recorded the scene on their phones, showing massive flames and thick smoke columns. Those videos spread across Telegram and social media, making it impossible for Moscow to deny what had happened. At the same time, panic grew among officials. The Kremlin quickly announced that the incident was caused by a technical fault in the plant. State TV claimed a minor transformer had caught fire and was under control. But images flooding in told a different story. Scorched switchyards, collapsed towers, and plumes of fire rising skyward. Western intelligence satellites confirmed the strike and relayed the data to analysts, who reported that Ukraine had not only hit the plant, but had done so with surgical precision. For Russia, the blackout was not just physical damage, it was humiliation. The wider fallout of the strike unfolded quickly. Belgorod and surrounding towns slipped into chaos as the blackout stretched into the night. Trains sat idle on tracks, leaving passengers stranded in dark carriages with no communication. Elevators across the city stopped between floors, trapping people for hours until emergency teams could reach them. Gas stations closed because pumps could not run, leading to long lines of cars waiting for fuel the next day. Shops shuttered, and some looters tried to take advantage of the confusion before security forces intervened. Families gathered in apartments lit only by candles and phone screens, listening to the distant sounds of sirens and explosions still echoing from the power plant. The blackout was more than just darkness. It was fear, and it spread fast. But the greatest impact came on the Russian military grid. The power plant had supplied electricity to radar stations, missile batteries, and large fuel storage depots. Without steady power, radar dishes fell silent, and early warning systems were useless. Military trains carrying fuel and ammunition toward the front lines were delayed, some sitting in rail yards waiting for power to be restored. Command posts operating on backup power struggled with reduced systems. Maps, screens, and communication links all went offline in the first hour. Even secure radio relays began to fail, forcing officers to rely on older, slower methods of communication. For Ukraine, this was not simply about destroying infrastructure, it was about choking Russia's ability to fight. Russian defenses tried to recover. More fighter jets were deployed, circling the skies over Belgorod, and additional Pantsir air defense systems were rushed into place. Soldiers fired at anything suspicious in the night sky, afraid of a second wave. But Ukraine had already achieved its goal. The main strike drone had done its job, and the swarm that came before it had drawn fire and drained Russian ammunition. Local commanders admitted privately that the defenses had been tricked. The small drones were the bait, the heavy drone was the hammer, and by the time they realized it, the plant was already burning beyond repair. The strike also carried a symbolic weight. Russian generals were rumored to be visiting the site that same day, celebrating what they believed was a secure energy hub. Ukrainian intelligence had been watching closely, timing the attack to deliver a direct message. No place, not even a site guarded by generals, was untouchable. While there was no confirmation that the officers were injured, the humiliation was clear. A plant considered vital and safe had been destroyed in minutes, right under their watch. That embarrassment spread through Russian media circles, even as state TV continued to insist it was a minor accident. Meanwhile, the blackout forced Russia to make difficult choices. Power had to be rerouted from other regions, leaving smaller towns dim or without electricity. Hospitals leaned on diesel generators, some of which failed overnight. Food warehouses risked losing supplies, and factories stopped production. Each of these failures stacked up into a larger crisis. The loss of the plant was not just one strike. It was a ripple effect that hit civilians, soldiers, and commanders alike. By the morning after the strike, The scale of the damage was undeniable. Satellite images showed burned transformers, collapsed transmission towers, and a blackened switchyard where once electricity pulsed through thousands of circuits. Smoke still rose from the ruins as repair crews moved cautiously among the wreckage, trying to assess what could be saved. But the reality was grim. The heart of the power plant was destroyed, and even temporary fixes would take days to install. Entire neighborhoods remained without light or heating, and industries tied to the grid faced shutdowns that would ripple for weeks. For Belgorod and its people, the blackout was not just a night of fear, but the start of a prolonged crisis. Moscow tried to control the narrative. Officials went on television, calling the attack an act of terrorism and insisting that power would be restored quickly. They claimed only a transformer had been damaged, downplaying the true scale of destruction. Yet, local videos and satellite images circulating online told a different story. Wide craters, collapsed structures, and massive fires that clearly could not be fixed overnight. Western analysts pointed out that the cost of repairing the plant would run into the hundreds of millions, if not more. For Russia, the economic burden was heavy, especially at a time when sanctions had already crippled imports of advanced equipment needed for energy repair. The blackout showed that no matter how much Russia tried to hide losses, the truth was visible from the sky. Strategically, the strike shook confidence inside Russia. Military units that relied on steady power from Belgorod were left scrambling for alternatives. Radar coverage in the sector dropped, leaving gaps in early warning networks. Supply depots struggled to refuel vehicles and run command systems. Even ammunition trains had to be delayed, and some were rerouted along longer, riskier paths. For Ukraine, this was the payoff. Not just an explosion, but a blow to the very infrastructure that supported Russia's war machine. Every blackout meant delays in troop movement. Every destroyed transformer meant reduced capacity to launch coordinated operations. The 340-kilogram Warhead had done more than damage a building. It had struck at the rhythm of Russia's war effort. And beyond the battlefield, the message was even clearer. Ukraine had proven it could strike deep inside Russian territory, at a target Russia thought was secure, at a time when generals were present. It showed that defenses could be tricked, that expensive systems like Pantsir and Buk could be pulled away by decoys, and that one well-placed drone could cripple an entire city. For Moscow, it was not only a military loss, but a humiliation, proof that its power grid and its commanders could be reached. For civilians, it was a reminder that the war was not distant, but inside their homes, flickering lights and dead silence in the streets. And for the world watching, it was proof of how modern war works now. Not always with tanks or bombs, but with small drones carrying heavy warheads, striking at the lifeblood of a nation. The blackout of Belgorod was not just darkness, it was a warning.